Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of the games that, if you're looking at the Big 12 championship race, you had circled way back in the spring. Arizona heading on the road to play Kansas State Friday night, a game that, as a college football fan myself, I'm fired up for. And you look at both of these programs not playing their best football heading into this game, right? They're both 2-0, which you're excited about. That being said, I don't think Kansas State fans or Arizona fans would say they would agree that these are the teams that we expected to see the first 2 weeks of the season. I think one of these teams is going to kind of have to hit their stride and win this football game. What team is that going to be is going to be the question. I think even more fascinating with this matchup, both of these teams have some big question marks that they have to answer Friday. You look at Kansas State, that secondary, watching back the Tulane game this morning, it looks like a disaster. I mean, the amount of throwing windows, whether it's man, whether it's zone, I mean, the man coverage guys are getting beat. In zone coverage, they're just not passing off the zones. A lot of busted assignments. The secondary's got to figure it out because you have Noah Fifita and T-Mac coming into town. And then you look at Arizona, one, stopping the run with mobile quarterbacks. You go back to week 1 against New Mexico. New Mexico had over 200 rushing yards in that football game. Arizona gave up 31 points to a New Mexico team that has a win total of 2.5 games. You look at Kansas State, they want to run the football. They got a lot of difference makers with the football in their hands, including quarterback Avery Johnson. Can Arizona stop this Kansas State rushing attack? Probably the biggest question mark in this game. Want to get into, a few players, a few matchups that I think are going to have really big impacts on this football game. Obviously, give you guys my pick and prediction for this game as well. Now, before we get into it, as always, number one, let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different ways that you can see this game playing out. Would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. Most importantly, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We are 100% going to break this game down Friday night. Without further ado, let's get into this one. And let's start with this Arizona offense going up against the Kansas State defense that I very rarely have said this about Kansas State under Coach Kleiman. It looks kind of just undisciplined. You look at the busted assignments and just kind of sloppy play on defense for Kansas State. We're not used to saying that with Coach Kleiman. And I'll say this, I have a lot of confidence that they are going to figure it out. Are they going to figure it out Friday night against Arizona? That's probably the question because you have Arizona coming in. We all know what Noah Fifita and T-Mac can do. My biggest question mark for Arizona, I think a lot of Arizona fans probably share this same sentiment. You watch Arizona play, and Noah Fifita and T-Mac are some of the two of the best players that we see in all of college football. It's certainly one of the best quarterback wide receiver batteries that we see. When T-Mac is bracketed, when he's taken out of the football game, what does Arizona's offense look like? New Mexico wasn't really able to do that, and T-Mac went for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. You look at when they played Northern Arizona last weekend, Northern Arizona was able to take away T-Mac a little bit. And that Arizona offense, as a result, really seemed to struggle. Noah Fifita had probably one of his worst games that we've seen him play during his career at Arizona. And so I think the big question mark for Kansas State is, one, can you just fix the secondary issues in general? But I think more importantly, can you take away T-Mac and force Noah Fifita to go other places with the football? And I think another question is, can Arizona block up Kansas State? One of my concerns about Arizona, I think T-Mac's the best wide receiver in the country. I think Noah Fifita is a phenomenal quarterback. Outside of those two, especially along the line of scrimmage, are we going to be able to match up with Kansas State? That's probably another question. You look on the flip side here, I think you're looking for Kansas State's rushing attack to – I think this is one of the big storylines of this football game, quite frankly, is how does this game get played? Like, is it going to turn into a track meet with Noah Fifita and T-Mac kind of running up and down the field? Or is Kansas State going to be able to establish the run, keep Noah Fifita and T-Mac off the field, control the time possession, and win this football game? That's going to be at least a question mark in terms of who wins this football game. And if you're Kansas State, that's exactly how you want it to look. You have Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards. The offensive line's been choppy, but they've been able to run the football pretty effectively. If you're Kansas State, you want to run the football using Avery Johnson and his ability to run and be an athlete, because you saw Arizona struggle massively with an offense that had a quarterback that could hurt them in the run game against New Mexico with Devin Dampier. Another thing for Kansas State is, I, and I'm kind of interested to hear what Kansas State fans feel like in the comment section. I feel like we're trying to protect Avery Johnson a little too much. And I get the quarterback depth's a question mark. I get Avery Johnson is the guy for this Kansas State offense. You want to keep him healthy. There's no question mark about that, but you also want to let Avery Johnson use the skill sets that make him such a special quarterback. I feel like they're treating Avery Johnson they're not really, you can tell Avery Johnson is kind of hesitant to use his athleticism and play a little bit free. And I think that's what makes Avery Johnson such a special quarterback. So I get there's a line to walk in terms of keeping Avery Johnson healthy, but also letting him be a playmaker in this football game, a massive game in terms of the Big 12 championship race. I think you got to get Avery Johnson off the leash. And I think, secondly, Dylan Edwards needs to play more. Dylan Edwards, every time he touches the football, it seems like good things are happening for Kansas State. This is not a knock on DJ Giddens, who I think is a phenomenal running back as well. Heck, I wouldn't even mind seeing two running back sets with Avery Johnson in the backfield. Throw DJ Giddens in there, Dylan Edwards back there, Avery Johnson. I think that can be a really hard personnel package to deal with. And I get it's a little unorthodox, but at the end of the day, and I think Coach Klein was so good at this last year for Kansas State, you got to get your best football players on the field and the ball in their hands. Let's make no mistake about it. Like, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards, and Avery Johnson are probably the 2 or 3 most impactful football players for Kansas State on offense. I think they got to do a better job getting them touches and letting them impact this offense. And so I'm kind of interested to see, maybe they were holding some of that back for this game Friday night against Arizona. And then you look at Arizona, I want to see some more negative plays created. Go back to the New Mexico game, 3 tackles for a loss, 0 sacks, really struggled to keep New Mexico behind the chains. You look at the best way to, I think, stifle Kansas State on offense. Got to create some negative plays, force Avery Johnson into those third and long situations where he has to operate as a pocket passer. And I think you got some guys that can get after the quarterback. You look at Trey Smith, I think he has really been impressive the first 2 weeks of the season. Can you stop the run? Can you create some negative plays? Can you make Avery Johnson operate in situations that he's uncomfortable? As talented as Avery Johnson is, there have been times this year where he's looked like a second-year quarterback. And so can you get Avery Johnson in more of those situations where he's uncomfortable? That's probably the biggest key for this Arizona defense. Now, getting into the pick here, Kansas State 7-point favorites at home. I'm going to go Kansas State. I think Kansas State has a more clear avenue to controlling this football game. I think they're going to be able to run the football, keep Noah Fifita and T-Mac off the football field. And when Arizona is on the football field, if you can take away T-Mac, I think there is a very good chance that you give Arizona some problems on offense. We haven't really seen an Arizona offense go through somebody other than T-Mac on the outside and have success. And so, one, can Kansas State run the football, play this game on their terms, control the time possession? That's probably the most important metric that I'm going to be looking at in this football game. Kansas State should be having plus 10 minutes in terms of time possession. If they can do that, they probably win this football game. But I think more importantly, when Arizona's on the football field, can you – it's a lot easier said than done to take away what I think is the best wide receiver in the country. That being said, if you can do it and you can at least contain him, Arizona hasn't shown yet that they can have a prolific offense without T-Mac getting involved. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Again, this is going to be a really fun game. We're going to break it down Friday night after the game. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.